In this Q&A, I talk about if you really need more than 2 fountain pens, if legal pads will ruin your nibs, and what I do to prevent from being scammed. Hey there, Brian Goulet here of GouletPens.com, and this is episode number 121 of Goulet Q&A. It has been a crazy week for us here. We had the Lamy Dark Lilac Safari that wasn't going to come in, and then it was, and then it wasn't, then it was, and then we were pushed out, and then it came early, and it's been pretty dramatic. But at this point now, I'm recording this on Wednesday afternoon. We had a very successful launch. I would consider it successful on Tuesday. We are actually getting pretty caught up as of Wednesday afternoon here. I'm really proud of my team. I gotta say, everybody has been firing on all cylinders this week. We were super prepared. We did as much as we could to be ready for this, and not everything went to plan because it never does, but everybody did a really good job of working their schedules and doing all kinds of stuff to really provide the best service possible. And I'm super proud of my team, gotta say. They just knocked it out of the park on this one. So the pens came in, the ink came in, the ink is gone. Unfortunately, in both bottle and cartridges, we didn't get enough and we were just shorted, and we're not gonna see more until the end of May, unfortunately. But we do have a good stock of pens. So if you are interested in the Lamy Safari Dark Lilac, we definitely have plenty of them, and we should for a little bit because we bought a lot of them. That was part of the whole drama. If you watched read our blog post on Monday, that was part of the whole drama, is because we ordered so many. It was shipped with a different shipping method and all kinds of craziness. So, you know, that just, it goes like that. And it's funny because we actually told on Monday that it was going to be delayed. And so I had initially planned to move my office because we're doing some internal shifting around here in the building. I'm gonna have an assistant that's starting soon, and so she's gonna sit outside of our office. Both me and Rachel, I'm actually gonna be right next to Rachel now. We share a wall instead of being on opposite ends of the building, which is nice now that we get to be together. But you know, it's gonna be interesting because I was planning on moving my office at the end of the week after we got through the Dark Lilac release, but because it was being pushed out, I was like, Monday was happening. I was like, well, let's just go ahead and start moving. And this desk is so unbelievably heavy, it is not even fair. Like, it took 4 of us, big, like, burly guys, to move this desk, and it was still difficult. But even still, team was great, big help there. And then the pens ended up coming on Tuesday. So I'm like halfway moved into my office, and there's all kinds of stuff going on, and the pens are coming, and it's all kinds of craziness. So it's been a lot of fun, a very exciting time for us here. But once the dust settles a little bit, I think we'll all be okay to kind of take a breather. So that has pretty much taken over a lot of the excitement that's been going on. And then another exciting little thing that's been going on is we've had some Goulet notebooks that are coming out, some Tomoe River notebooks, which I had intended to grab a bunch of them, and I did not grab a bunch of them, but I have my personal one that I've been carrying around. So these are staple bound notebooks with a thin cardboard cover, and they are in several different rulings. We're starting out with dot and lined. We're eventually going to end up with blank and graph as well. Those are going to be coming later. But it uses the official Tomoe River paper, and it's going to be the thicker Tomoe River, the 68 gram instead of the normal 52. There's several different manufacturers out there that are making notebooks out of the 52, and that's cool. We had that option, but we decided to go with a slightly thicker paper because it gets less ghosting and show through and stuff like that. Still great sheening, still great smoothness and performance and everything that you would expect from Tomoe in the thinner stuff, except it's slightly thicker. So a lot of people have been interested in that. We will be looking to do probably a blog post on that soon, maybe a quick video on it fairly soon. I'm not going to talk about it too robustly in Q&A here because I'm not quite prepared with all the stuff that's been going on this week. And then, yeah, so that's kind of what's been going on with that. But a lot of people have been buying them, so that's been kind of cool. So I would expect that we'll see lots of reviews and things like that start to crop up pretty soon, but I expect them to be very well received because they're pretty awesome notebooks. Also, the Delta Dolce Vita Masterpiece, we finally launched it. I have one in my backpack here. I've been showing it for the last couple of weeks over Q&A, and it's a nice pen. It's a resin pen. I originally thought it was going to be celluloid. Turns out Delta is having some issues with manufacturing their celluloid. Basically, the manufacturer of the celluloid isn't really making anymore. Like, the availability's just dried up, so they're having a dry spell with celluloid. So this is the masterpiece. It's a gorgeous black and orange with the gold trim. So the gold trim is an exclusive to us. If you're interested in that, I do recommend it. It's a nice pen. It's a little on the I was definitely like on the luxury side of pens. So if you're looking at weighing that between that and a Safari, it's definitely not like a one-for-one kind of thing. But if you are interested in Delta, like the Dolce Vita or anything like that, this is the first new thing they've done with the Dolce Vita in a little while, and I think they are doing a pretty good job with it. So I've been using mine for the last month or so, and I really enjoy it. I've got a fine nib on it. It writes really nicely. So that's been kind of cool. So I'm excited to have that. We also quickly, for like a hot minute, had the Platinum 3776 Stardust, which may or may not still be on the site by Friday by the time this Q&A goes out. We're all out of the medium nibs. We only have fines left as of the recording of this video. We only got 38 pens, which is a decent amount, but with the dark lilac and all this kind of stuff, there were a lot of people that were kind of buzzing anyway, so I think that maybe kind of spurred some demand for the pens, and it's literally like, so it's kind of a slightly translucent pen with like a gold fleck in it. Really nice looking, and it's been very well received so far. So I kept one for myself. I rather enjoy it, and we just had the opportunity to get it. It was like a one-shot deal, and I was like, all right, we'll take it. And then this was it. So once these are gone, they're gone. So that's why I'm not going to talk about it all too much. Also, we put out this week a Atlanta recap vid, put that out on Wednesday. So that was really cool. Rachel and I just sat down with Jenny, because the three of us are the ones that went to Atlanta. We were like, you know what, we're going to have Dark Lilac coming. We're going to have a lot of craziness going on, but I don't want to forget about all the stuff that we did in Atlanta. So we quickly went down and shot a video kind of talking about what Atlanta was like for us. So we went down to the Atlanta Pen Show. We recapped the whole video, overlaid all kinds of images and B-roll and stuff, just to kind of tell you what was going on. And then we have a lot of follow-up videos that are going to be coming out over the next probably 2 months of different interviews and stuff that we did with people at the show. So that's pretty cool. I'm really glad that came together so nicely. And then lastly, before I get into the questions, we got a huge response on the Q&A, question of the week from last week. I know I kind of freaked a bunch of you out when I was talking about which videos I could possibly give up and all this kind of stuff. It really wasn't meant to allude to anything. So let me just go ahead and alleviate all of your concerns right now. It was literally just a hypothetical, and talking as the company grows, if I was to have to make any cutbacks, what would be most acceptable to you guys? It was not letting you know that anything drastic is happening anytime soon. Believe me, I message received from you all. Your feedback was fantastic. I do think I could probably look to incorporate some stuff within members of my team more. That's something I've always kind of been interested in, but it has been a challenge kind of working that in with just the normal stuff that we got going on every day, because the video stuff actually takes quite a bit of time to do, way more than you would think just by watching the final product. But that said, I got my wheels turning a little bit. It's got some conversations starting with some folks on the team, and I think we can do some interesting things. So nothing firm that's going to be happening immediately with that. But I thought it was an interesting hypothetical that generated a lot of very worthy feedback as far as I'm concerned. So that's kind of cool. So that's pretty much it. So I'm going to go ahead and get into the questions for this week, and then we will rock and roll. Starting out with pen and writing questions, only have a couple of these this week. Very heavy on those last week, lighter this week. First one is from Tudor109 on Twitter. Says, what is the justification for owning more than 2 fountain pens? Love them, want more, but can't justify the money. Okay, well, you're either asking the wrong guy or exactly the right guy, because I have very well justified in my mind why I should have more than 2. But really I'm deep into this hobby, and so I would say that, for me it's like a no-brainer, but I think that it's not purely a matter of utility, right? Because honestly, if it was just a matter of utility, do we even really need fountain pens at all? I know that's like blasphemy to say, like, but the truth of the matter is no, there's lots of other alternatives. You can use a pencil, you can use a ballpoint, you can text, you can type, you can speak into your whatever device that will do everything for you. There's a lot of different ways to communicate and write things down and accomplish things. Now, will it do it in the exact same way that a fountain pen will do? No, but you can still communicate without using a fountain pen. So, getting the utility aspect of the way, it's not serving a strictly utilitarian purpose. It's accomplishing something else. And the thing that I've always loved about the fountain pen community, and the thing that's always driven me to serve the community more, has been the passion. The fact that fountain pens, I'm just gonna say it, they're a little bit of a hassle. Like, you have to get over that initial hump of filling it and cleaning it and getting a little bit of ink on your fingers and all this kind of stuff that, you know, some people I talk to and I'm like, oh, fountain pens, they're like, oh, I really don't, you know, and they're like intimidated or they're just completely turned off by it. And I'm like, cool, you know, I'm not gonna press this on you because it's not something you're interested in. The thing about having a little bit of that hurdle to jump over getting into the fountain pen hobby is that it only the people that really want to do it end up being in the community. So you end up with this very passionate, very engaged, very involved community within fountain pens. And that to me is really exciting because it means that everybody's here because they want to be, not because they have to be. You know, you don't see you know, enthusiasts getting together to go to a show to talk about car insurance. You know, it just doesn't happen because no one's passionate about car insurance. Okay, maybe there's a couple of people out there, but in general, you know, I would say, sorry to pick on you guys. If you're in the car insurance business, please, I'm sorry. You provide a very valuable service, and I'm a patron of your, you know, trade as well. But it is a little different when it's something that you're required to do versus something that you are choosing to do. So that said, if you are into the fountain pen hobby, to even justify getting a fountain pen at all, I think there's a little bit of romanticism, I'll call it that, as opposed to strict utility. There's something about a fountain pen that's a little bit different than other pens. And whatever that thing is, whether it's being unique, whether it's the history of it, whether it's the collectability, whether it's the passion that's put in behind it by the manufacturers or retailers like me, there's a lot of different reasons that you could get into it. And I think that tends to fuel the reason to get more. It's not purely because, okay, I need more. Now I will say that there are some people who kind of need multiples, right? Like if you're an artist or if you're a writer and you like to ink it up with different ink colors, or you like to use different nib sizes or types or brush pens versus fountain and all these other things, yeah, okay, you might need a variety of tools to be able to do your craft. That could certainly be one explanation. Teachers, you know, cartoonists, all that kind of stuff. You might just collect them, you know what I mean? If you collect dolls or stamps or coins or anything like that, you know, why not fountain pens? Why not shoes? Why not whatever, vintage, you know, New York Jets jerseys, Gary V. So I would say that if you are into anything, whatever it is, that's your thing, you know. And for fountain pen people, because it's something that you don't have to do, those who end up in fountain pens do it because they want to, and they just get into it for whatever their own reason is. Me personally, I'm a user of fountain pens. I like to write with them. I do dabble a little bit in the collectivity of them. You know, I have more than a few Safaris and different Lamy pens because I like to have all the colors and stuff like that, sure. But, you know, for me, if I can't write with the pen, I'm like, well, you know, what's the point? I might as well be collecting whatever, you know, antique tea caddies or something like that. That was random. I don't know why I said that. But, you know, I think for me, it's all about loving it, and you justify it however you need to. So for me, some of the things that I enjoy the most about fountain pens, it's just like the entertainment aspect of it. I just enjoy it. It's very tactile, and so I like to handle a lot of different pens. I have a woodworking background. I do a lot of things with my hands, and so for me, I like to have a lot of pens. Maybe it's a different filling mechanism that I like to fill around with, or it's different materials that it's made of that intrigue me. Lots of different reasons, different nib sizes, different you know, you know, flex nibs and all this kind of stuff. So for me, it's the uniqueness of it, and then especially for people who get into vintage stuff, oh my gosh, when you start getting to the history, it kind of reaches like a whole other level. I haven't really gotten into that too much. That's when collectability can really start to go nuts, because you start getting into Parker 51s and Vacuumatics and like all these Schaefers and all this kind of stuff. You can really go deep into it because there's so much history there. There's books written about it. There's, you know, there's literally pen shows. Like I went to Atlanta a couple weeks ago. There's literally people there that have been in the trade for 50, 60 years, where this just unbelievable depth of knowledge about particular brands and things like that. You can really get in deep when you get into vintage pens. So don't say I didn't warn you. But another neat thing too that I've seen, you know, that's kind of interesting is using it as like a goal, you know, so this could really be for anything that you're interested in. But, you know, I've seen more than a few people that have said, like, once I achieve something at work, this promotion, this you know, weight loss goal, this whatever, it could be personal or professionally related, then I'm going to get my Holy Grail pen or this next pen that I have. They use it kind of as an incentive thing. And I've read different studies and stuff like that that say that when you're trying to achieve goals, setting a little incentive for yourself can actually, you know, statistically help you to achieve that goal a little better. So fountain pens to varying degrees can be one of those things. So that's kind of interesting. I do that for myself sometimes. So yeah, absolutely. But I would say that it's a really personal thing that is different for everyone, and you really can't make a judgment about anyone else and whether they should or should not be into it. It's part of the thing that I love the most about fountain pens is it is so deeply personal, but yet there's also a community of people who really don't judge, that just like they're into their thing, they know you're into your thing, sometimes those things overlap, and we're all cool because we are all here because we want to be. All right, next question. This is from Hugh C over email. I've been eyeing the Kaweco AL-Sport because it seems like a durable pen that would easily survive my pocket or bag. However, I was wondering how well you think it would survive in a drop test sort of scenario. My TWSBI Eco had survived drops, but it has a lot of ugly scratches to show it. I'm a student who can be very clumsy and drop things, so I want to get a pen that would be a one-time purchase because of durability. My friend is the very durable Karas Kustoms Fountain K, except I think the AL-Sport looks a lot cooler and I'd rather buy that. Okay, that's totally cool. It's totally up to you. So I grabbed a few AL-Sports, have a bunch of them because there are a bunch of them at this point. Well, not all aluminum ones necessarily, but they're metal pens. They're heavy metal pens. So there's a couple different ones. There's the raw, which is basically just, you know, shiny aluminum, and this is going to scuff up and all that kind of stuff over time. So this is definitely one that's meant to be tossed around. There's the tumbled one, which honestly, or the, what do they call it, the stone washed or whatever it is, that already looks like it's been roughed up, which is actually pretty cool. You know, it's kind of like when you buy like distressed jeans and stuff like that. So that's kind of neat as well. You can get the blue one, which I like because it's blue, and it's more like a powder coated kind of thing. And then there's a solid brass one, which is even heavier. And this one is going to be pretty durable. It's even going to patina over time as well. So there's different options, and this isn't exhaustive of everything that's out there, but it's an example of some of the pens that you get. But essentially the essence behind it is it's a heavy metal pen, which is the same concept as what Karas Kustoms has going on. So Karas Kustoms, they have the Fountain K and the ink, which we also sell in addition to the Kawecos. But you may have seen my video where I took the Fountain K that you mentioned and I chucked it across the parking lot, and twice actually to get that shot, and then I ran over it with my car. I still use that pen today. It's you know, it's got a couple little dings here and there. It's got some character, which I now enjoy because it's part of its history, and I remember throwing that thing across the parking lot. And you know, you could easily do the same thing with this. Now, will it hold up exactly the same? Well, I mean, I think it would hold up pretty darn well because it's still a pretty thick pen. It's not as big as the Fountain K, so the metal itself might be a little bit thinner. You know, I think if you really chucked it or if you really ran over it with something heavy, maybe it wouldn't have quite the durability of a Fountain K or an ink from Karas Kustoms, but it's still going to be pretty darn solid. So I think if you did want to invest in one of these pens, that it would not be a terrible decision, especially if you want something that's going to really be kind of roughed up quite a bit. So I would say it's not a bad choice at all. If you like the style of it, If you like the way that it writes, actually the nib that's on this pen is the exact same one that's used on the Karas Kustoms Fountain K. So they're going to write very, very similar. They may be tuned a little bit different depending on the manufacturer, but Kaweco and Karas Kustoms, at least as of this recording, both use Bach nibs. So the nibs are going to be very similar. And in fact, the nib that's on the AL-Sport is going to be the same size as what's on the Fountain K. Now the ink has a larger nib, so it might write a little bit differently, but the Fountain K uses the same nib. So even in terms of how it writes, it's going to be very similar. So I think you really can't go wrong either way, but if you like this style better, you can knock yourself out. To touch real quick on your Eco that you have, that's a plastic pen. It's a very different kind of pen, so anytime you're getting like a heavy solid metal pen like this, you're going to pay a little bit more because of the machining and stuff that's involved, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not a bad deal. And then the other pen that you didn't mention in here is the Lilliput. That's a tiny little pen, which I actually really kind of dig for a pocket pen. It's cartridge only, which is tougher, which actually basically these are too. You can't really convert these into an eyedropper or anything. And for whatever reason, the Kaweco converters and the Monteverdi mini converters that fit on the Kaweco pens aren't quite the size to fit into the metal ones. I've noticed that. So, or at least consistently. So I don't know whether that has to do with the machining or the thickness of the metal or what, but it doesn't quite fit all the way. So that's kind of a bummer. So they're really cartridge only. So that's probably the one thing that the Karas Kustoms really has on this pen, is you can use a converter on it. But other than that, I think you would enjoy it very much. All right, next question. Let's shift over to ink for a real quick second. John S. on Facebook says, in your opinion, what's the best bottle of ink to put on my desk at work to say, bam, I use fountain pens? I think any bottle would get that done, because most people are going to be like, what is this thing? But I picked some of my faves, okay? I have Pilot Iroshizuku, which I'm going to have to take these out of the box, but I want to show you the whole packaging. So Iroshizuku definitely is a strong contender, because the presentation of this bottle is superb. It just looks gorgeous. It's got a very Japanese inspired design. It's got this little string thing which makes it look fancy, like a little tie or something, or a scarf. It's got this big fat glass bottom, and it just looks really impressive. It's also got a nice wide neck, so it's easy to fill. Definitely that one's up there. I'm trying to put these so you can see them. Another one, Pelikan Edelstein. And these are all going to be expensive inks, I ain't going to lie, because the packaging is expensive. And the bottle is a lot of the reason of the cost, honestly, when you get to these premium inks. Pelikan Edelstein, also thick bottom. Definitely a little more of a modern design, modern flair to it than the Iroshizuku. It's a little more classic, but still modern. I don't know. I don't really know my terminology very well in that respect, but nice printing on the front here. Nice hefty cap on the top. Looks really good presentation-wise. So that one is a contender for sure. I would say Faber-Castell, another German brand. They have a very classy looking bottle as well. Sorry, Graf von Faber-Castell. That's how they are marketing their inks now, and it says it on the top. So for a while we were supposed to call it Faber-Castell, and now it's Graf von Faber-Castell. So that one is also really good looking. And then Caran d'Ache, there is a Swiss ink, and theirs is really interesting because it's on a slant. So when you have it sitting on the desk, it's very distinctive because it kind of slants over and makes it a little easier to fill at times. But that definitely doesn't look like a normal bottle of ink sitting on your desk. And then the other one I have that's not as much of a premium for sure, but I still think this bottle is really interesting. Diamine, now their normal bottle is interesting but not super impressive, but I think their anniversary, 150 anniversary ink is really cool. This triangular bottle, it's a little more expensive than their regular ink, and Blue Velvet is definitely an amazing ink. Love it. So that one is really kind of cool too. It looks like a little wedge of brie or something. So all of these I think are kind of like tops in terms of presentation for me. There's some other ones too that look pretty decent, but these really kind of take the cake for me. Partly because they're all more expensive. And the reason they're more expensive is because of the packaging, at least in part. So if I had to choose between all of these, boy, it's gonna be really tough. As I'm looking at all of them sitting here right now, the Caran d'Ache one sticks out to me the most because of the slants, but I would say that probably the one that has been most popular and most appealing to people as being kind of a distinctive, unique, yet classic bottle would be the Pilot Iroshizuku. It just looks really nice. It has nice lines. That I think would probably be the one to take the cake, but any of these would really get the job done. And then of course you got the color of the ink itself and all these other factors involved. But I think that Iroshizuku would have to be tops for me. All right, move those out of the way. Let's move on to paper. Julian M from Facebook asks, will I ruin the smoothness of my nib by writing on paper of lesser quality, i.e. legal pads? Okay, so you're talking like the yellow, just kind of cheap legal pads. So paper of lesser quality, generally you're talking about not as smooth, a little more absorbent, that kind of thing. Are you going to ruin the smoothness of it? Technically, maybe, like a little bit faster than you would on smooth paper. So paper is actually an abrasive. It's a very fine abrasive, you know, but paper is not a glassy, smooth surface. There is friction that is caused when you are writing on the paper. In fact, if you look very, very closely, I mean, you can't even with your eyes, but like with, you know, macro type of situation, and when you're writing with a fountain pen, you're actually creating a static charge because of the friction on the paper. If you look really closely at paper, it's actually quite bumpy when you get really, really down to the surface, as most things look different when you get that close in. But as you're writing and your nib is moving across the surface, it's creating friction, which creates heat. That heat is going to be part of what wears down the metal on that nib. So the more pressure you're writing, the faster you're writing, the more you're writing, all of that is going to speed along the process of wearing down the tip of your nib. And the more abrasive the paper you have, the faster that's going to happen. Now, is it going to be anything that's fast enough for you to really notice? That's going to depend on how much you're really using it. If you're exclusively using legal pads and exclusively using that same fountain pen for 10 straight years, you're probably going to notice a year or two off the life of your pen based on using that legal pad versus a smoother paper. Is that really enough to make a difference for you? Especially if you're like me and you have a whole bunch of different pens and you're changing them out and rotating them all the time. It's probably not going to make that much of a difference. I would say if you're happy with the legal pad and the performance you're getting, the feel on the page, the ink performance, the way it looks, I probably wouldn't sweat it too much. Nibs are pretty tough. You know, in general, you know, the nib wear that you're going to get is going to vary kind of a lot depending on the manufacturer. You know, the quality of the tipping and stuff and the hardness of the tipping really varies a lot. And I've talked to different nibmeisters about this, and they say it really does vary a lot. They can tell when they're grinding nibs. Some nibs it's like, you know, and it just goes away. Other ones it really takes a while to kind of bear in. And it's not even like exclusively one brand or anything. You know, brands have kind of shifted and changed materials over time. So I would say that it really is going to vary quite a lot. So I know I've had questions like, how long will the tip last and all this kind of stuff. It varies because of, you know, various things like the paper you're using and stuff like that, but it's also how hard you press when you write and how much you're writing and the type of tipping and all these other things. So, you know, I would say 10 years is a pretty good assumption you can make if you're using that one pen regularly. You can probably expect that your pen's going to last 10 years. Now, you know, I asked Mike Masayama, for example, and he said that he had somebody who was an author that was writing his books out by hand that completely wore out a nib in 3 years. So you can do that, but it's not. It's honestly for most people who are just using pens daily, you know, just using them at work and all this kind of stuff. You're not writing a novel with them or anything like that. You're not going to wear down your nib fast enough with one paper or another, quick enough for it to really make a difference. Honestly, like you are probably going to go around and buy a new pen just because you're interested in one and you want the hot new thing sooner than you would need to replace it strictly because you straight up wore it out. But if you do have a nib that's particularly meaningful to you, it's a pen that your grandfather had and so on and so forth, you can get them retipped most of the time by a professional. So that's something you should have evaluated by a nibmeister if it's something that is feasible. But that certainly would be one consideration in this respect, is if you have a pen that is particularly meaningful and you know it can't be repaired for whatever reason or another, you probably want to use it lighter or maybe use it on smoother paper. But all in all, it's probably not anything you need to worry too much about. Cool. let's get on to a couple of business questions. This one is from poundcakeshuffle on YouTube. Digging the name there, Poundcake. I see scams posted on YouTube. For example, someone purchases a $400 tablet and returns it. The seller receives back a $175 tablet that is broken as the return. My question is, what's your company's return, exchange, or credit policy? And how does your company protect itself from scams? Well, I can honestly say that we don't get people pulling this kind of stuff on us. That's one thing about the fountain pen community is it's pretty hard to pull a fast one on most fountain pen retailers, because most retailers, us and probably many others, are pretty involved in their stock. I would imagine if you had a larger retailer whose focus isn't fountain pens, like Amazon or somebody like that, I'll just pick on Amazon because it's easy, then I would say that you could easily buy a genuine product, send back a replacement, damaged or counterfeit or something like that, get a return for it, and that would probably be pretty easy for you to do, to scam them, because they don't really know what they have. For us, it's really not an issue because we know our stuff inside and out. This kind of scam we really don't get. This whole like switcheroo kind of thing. Every now and then we'll get somebody that'll return, you know, a Pilot Falcon, and the tines are splayed like this, and they say, oh, I received it like that, and we're like, no, you didn't, because Pilot does not send out, I mean, we've checked so many of those pens, Pilot does not send out pens with the tines like this. You know, we will usually err on the side of grace with that kind of thing. However, you know, we look at, you know, customers' order history, we take a lot of things into account. We use general common sense and awareness. I would rather be taken advantage of a little bit here and there by someone than treat everybody as if they were a scammer. That's kind of just like overall my feeling. This community is so tight and so generous and so understanding. It's really not anything that I am too paranoid about, even at the scale that we are now with pushing 40 people in our company. I'm still pretty involved in things. If there's anything truly weird going on, I'm gonna find out about it pretty quick. And usually if somebody's scamming like this, there's a pattern and a history to it. It's not something that's really ever been an issue for us. What's been more of an issue has been scamming on the front end of using stolen credit cards and fraud and that kind of thing. That happens way more than you would probably think. There are systems in place for that. We have an enterprise level fraud detection system that monitors that kind of stuff. And that is something that there is an art form in and of itself. And that is actually more of a pain because, you know, you may not realize, but when a credit card is stolen and used to purchase something from a retailer like us, so bad, evil person, usually it's overseas, is using a stolen credit card to buy something from a retailer like us. It's usually very expensive pens or multiples of something that's really hot, like a Lamy Safari Dark Lilac. We have conversations about like, all right, the scammers are gonna come out for this pen because it's really hot. With something like that, they'll use a stolen credit card, buy it. By the time the credit card is flagged and shut down, the product is already shipped to wherever they chose to have it shipped. The credit card company comes back and does what's called a chargeback to us as a retailer. They say, oh, well, this wasn't a proper credit card, so we're just gonna come in and take that money back. Thanks. We don't get any choice on the matter, they just come and take it. And they say, well, and because of that, we're gonna slap you with a $25 or a $35 fee, depending on what they feel like. So bam, here's a fee for having someone use a stolen credit card for you and buy. And by the way, if that happens too much, we're gonna, you know, the payment processor, they're gonna say, well, you guys are just a magnet for fraud, so we're gonna increase how much we're gonna charge you to process your credit cards because you're letting all these fraudsters come in here and scam you. So that's really a delight as well. And then we're out the product, plus the cost of shipping. And if it's overseas, it's not insignificant. So, you know, we have these high-end products that were stolen, basically. We get the chargeback, we get slapped with a fee, we might have our rates increased, and then we're out the cost of the product and the shipping. And we're just sitting here like, what the heck? We're just trying to run a business. So that kind of thing is much more annoying. It's way more work to do the kind of scam that you're talking about here, so it doesn't happen nearly as much. The whole stolen credit card thing happens too much. And so that's why we have a fraud system in place to detect that stuff ahead of time. So all in all, I would say that, every now and then we might get somebody where it's like, okay, they probably sprung their tines on the nib, or they probably dropped the pen and are just not being as straightforward as they probably should about it. Usually it's like, oh, it came this way, and it's like, no, it really didn't. But we'll usually err on the side of grace, unless it's super obvious. We'll usually err on the side of grace. If it becomes a pattern, that's when we're like, hey, seriously, this is not the case here, and but it's very rare that has to happen. Don't get any ideas though, okay? Because we do watch out for that kind of stuff. But honestly, it's not something that happens frequently enough for me to really fret about it, because most people are so understanding in this community and so caring and generous, and they respect kind of what we do and what we offer to the community, where they're not really trying to go out and scam. So it's not really something that I lose any sleep over. Cool. Kevin G on Facebook has a good question. Says, how aware are you of other retailers around the world? Not like in an espionage way. What I mean is, do you do research on them and see what they carry and their strategies? Would you avoid a product if you know there are lots of retailers carrying it already? Would you go for a product because you know not many other retailers have them? Okay, so you got like layers in this question. I would say generally, generally speaking, I'm aware of what's going on, partly just because we're so involved with social media in here, and we're very engaged with our community. Most of the time when we find out about things, it's because somebody's asked us about it, or we see it coming up on Twitter, or we're just seeing pictures on Instagram or whatever. Just by kind of doing our normal thing, we'll find out about most things that are going on. Information travels pretty fast on the internet. And then even if it's something we're not as aware of, like for example, this is something very, very recent that happened. So we have mixed stock of Noodler's ink in terms of the 3-ounce bottles, whether they're glass or plastic. It's something that happened over the winter. They've transitioned back to glass for the most part, but we're still receiving mixed stock, and we still have mixed stock on our shelf even months later. It's been frustrating for all parties involved. It was something that Noodler's basically had to do, or not ship any ink at all, to do the whole glass and plastic thing. And we have mixed stock. I could go into a lot of details about it, but that's just kind of where we're at. We have people that have been requesting to have us check, which we've been hesitant to do because it's been so mixed, to check and then promise it's going to be glass. And so we haven't really been doing it. Well, we had somebody on FPN that posted a thread about it. And I promise I'm going somewhere with this. We had somebody on FPN that posted a thread about it, how they weren't really happy with how we were not willing to check it. So, it caused me to go back to my team and talk about, is this something that we should consider doing now? What's our mix like? We need to revisit this every so often, because the stock is transitioning and will ultimately go back to all glass, but it's just taking a long time. And so the feeling was, yeah, we're going to start talking about how we can start doing that now. It is complicated, it takes time, and it's a really above and beyond thing, but it's probably worth doing. That thread was on the Fountain Pen Network, and it was brought up to me by a customer that reached out to us and said, hey, I saw this thread. It doesn't really speak very highly of you guys in this current situation. You should probably go check it out and respond. And that's exactly what I did. So I was able to respond within, I don't know exactly the time because they were, in a different time zone, but it was within a matter of hours. Okay, it was same day. I was able to respond and be very timely on that. Ultimately, the thread ended up getting locked and all this other kind of stuff, but I was able to be present and address it because it was brought to me. That same kind of thing happens if, there's something interesting going on in the fountain pen world. Somebody else, like for example, if there's a new product that's coming out and pictures get leaked on some retailer elsewhere in the world, we'll usually find out about it pretty quick because people will start asking us about it immediately. So things like that. So I'm generally aware, but I really don't spend a lot of time going onto all my retailer, on the competitor sites and clicking around and what is this person doing? What is that person doing? Oh, I wonder what their strategy is, The more time I spend worrying about what other people are doing, the less time I'm spending about what I'm doing and making intelligent decisions in my context, in my world. So I think it's important to be generally aware of what's going on, just so you know, especially in retailing where you have third-party products and it's things that What I mean by that is it's products that are available in multiple places. You know, I'm a retailer. I sell a product that's sold at many different retailers. So if I'm way off base in my pricing or information, I need to know that just so I can be in line. But I don't really spend any time, you know, watching anyone else in their strategy and looking at what they're doing. There might be, you know, I may notice, you know, a social media piece that somebody else does and be like, oh, that looks really good. That's really kind of cool. We've been talking about doing something like that. Okay, interesting. I wonder what we could do, you know, ourselves that would be different or better or, you know, whatever. So some of that might go on, but it's really not a significant part of our strategy, I guess would be the way to say it. As far as like you're asking me about products to carry, so if there's a product that a lot of other retailers are carrying, would we either want to carry it more or less as a result of that? I would say it really depends. Sometimes it's like, okay, this is a brand that's really well known and respected, like Lamy, for example. Back when we were in the early days, Lamy was available at a bunch of different places. It was really talked about. It was everywhere on social media. And was like, oh, Lamy would be a really good brand for us to carry. And so we started carrying Lamy, and we have seen success with Lamy as a brand over the last 5 years. Same kind of thing with other products like that. Other times, you know, like Parker and Waterman, for example. We don't really do well with Parker and Waterman, just being honest. I think it's available in too many places, you know. I mean, that's one of the reasons that, you know, that it's just not as hot of a seller for us. But, you know, it's available at literally like office supply stores and a Walmart and places like that. Not all of the full line, but you know, these brands that are available everywhere. Pilot G2s, that's a really good example. We tried to carry Pilot Click G2s and we've discontinued all of them because we just aren't special, you know, enough to be able to carry them. No, that sounds wrong. We weren't able to do anything special enough with them to make it worthwhile for us carrying because they're available everywhere. So things like that, it's like, okay, we kind of knew that risk getting into the G2s. We thought it still might do okay. It didn't, so we stopped carrying them. But there may be other things like that where that can be some kind of indication. On the flip side of that, things that are not available many places, that can be really hit or miss too. Things that aren't available many places, I have a really very, very fresh and recent example of that. Diplomat, okay? Diplomat is a German brand that's actually distributed just down the road from us here in Virginia. It's a brand that has really only had a significant presence in the US since like 2007 or so. It's not a brand that a lot of people are aware of. There are some reviews and stuff online. Some of their pricing is a little on the high end, but the pens are pretty nice. It's something that we linked up with them at the Atlanta show just a couple of weeks ago. I've been carrying it around and using it, considering whether it's something we want to carry. I really don't see it many places. That to me is like, ugh, I don't really know. It's a really kind of a gamble. It's not really well known. That could be an opportunity for us to kind of get on the ground floor and build rapport and all this kind of stuff. But at the same time, we've also had a number of brands that have not had much of a presence that we have then tried to get rolling, and it just never gains any traction, and people don't really trust it or aren't really interested or have questions but don't really care enough to have them answered. And so we've had a lot of brands that have not been as well known that have been a bust. So a lot of it comes down to gut instinct, really knowing the products well, getting a good sense of supply and demand, and then being engaged in the community and seeing kind of what else is going on. I would say I probably spend more effort looking at what bloggers, reviewers, and other people are doing who are like using them than I do at other retailers. It's not like I look at my competitors and say, oh, do they have Diplomat? You know, that's not really as much a consideration for me. I look around and I say, who's reviewed these Diplomats? What kind of ratings? What kind of general buzz is there? Are there FPN posts about it? Is there stuff on the FP Geeks forum? Are there YouTube video reviews and things like that? If I can't find anything, then that's really maybe not the best sign. I'm not saying that's the case with Diplomat, but I'm saying, like, you know, if it's so new that nobody even knows about it yet, it's got to be pretty darn special for us to be able to really get off the ground and present it like that. Because usually, the times when we've done that with newer brands, it's more often than not we don't see success with it. So it's nice to see a little bit of a track record, but usually that comes from blogs and stuff, and not as much from our competitors. So But in general, having exclusive products that only we have is a very good thing, especially from established brands like, you know, Noodler's inks and certain pens, a Delta Dolce Vita Masterpiece, for example. Those kind of things are really great to have because it's something that is pretty well known, but we get to have an exclusive. Usually we have to buy in large quantities and work all kinds of things to be able to make that happen, but that's really nice when we are able to do that. So there's a lot of different, you know, nuances and things like that that we get to do. It's really kind of, that's kind of really fun stuff for me, is to get to kind of, you know, wheel and deal a little bit and work out some things. And how many do you think we're going to sell? I don't know. Let's try and figure it out. What's and we get all into it. And Rachel and I get really excited when we get to talk about that kind of stuff. So that's one of the more interesting and dynamic aspects on the retailing, the business side of things. And then of course there's the, like, how does a pen write? Does it function? What is the sentiment about it? People actually care. That's a really interesting aspect of it too. So there you go. Hope that gives you some kind of insight, Kevin. Last question for this week. This is from Beth S on Facebook, and this is a troubleshooting question. When filling a converter via the ink syringe method, I find that it takes a long time and can be difficult to get the ink started. Any tips on how to get writing more quickly and easily? Well, I'm going to give you a little demonstration here. So I'm going to zoom in a bit. I have a Lamy Vista, which is a clear pen, which works well for demonstration purposes. I'm going to grab my syringe, and then I have a bottle of my inky demonstration water here that I'm going to try to find because I just moved everything. Haha! Here we go. Of course it's blue. So, what you're talking about when you're saying the ink syringe method, and I'm going to zoom in just a little bit here and not try and have it like super in on my face showing just my mouth because that gets kind of weird and it looks like I'm on manual focus. So I'm not going to zoom in too much, but here we go. So if you look at where we are with this pen, the ink syringe method is a variation of filling a pen. With a converter pen like this, which is what you're asking me about, rather than filling the bottle with the converter like so, you can use an ink syringe. Why would you want to do that? A couple different reasons. One, you might not want to get it inky and have to clean it off. You might just want to clean the converter and then put it on the pen. That's fine. Usually the reason you use an ink syringe method with a converter filling pen is because your ink level is getting so low you can't really fill it properly from within the pen anymore. And you know, if it's a tall like Noodler's bottle like this, you know, you can sometimes use a converter just as its own syringe, but if it's a low level of ink in the bottle like this and you're trying to fill it just with a converter, it can be hard to like get it just with your fingers like this. So that's where the ink syringe can really help. So ink syringe is just a blunt tip needle syringe like so. You put it on and you can fill it up, and you can fill your syringe with your ink bottle. I'm actually going to zoom out so you can actually see what I'm doing now. I'm just all over the place today. Woo! All right. So if you fill your ink syringe like so, okay, and then you want to fill your converter, there you go. Your converter is now filled for the most part, and then you install it on your pen. Isn't that clean? Now you still have to clean up your syringe, but there's nothing on your pen to have to worry about. The disadvantage of doing this method is now you have ink all up in here, but there's no ink in your feed, which is what you're having a problem starting your pen. There's a couple different ways you can do that. One is you can just kind of shake it a little bit and just give it time. Just let it work its way through the feed, same as you would if you had a cartridge, right? Essentially what you've done here is use your converter as a cartridge of sorts. And it's eventually going to just naturally work its way down. You can actually see there's little bubbles that are coming up here in the converter as it's just kind of soaking down. So as the ink is working its way down through, and I'm sorry, I can't really zoom in enough to show you, but as the converter is emptying of ink, little air bubbles are coming up here because there's an air ink exchange that happens with fountain pens. That's actually what allows it to flow properly. Over time, it's going to naturally just kind of do that. So you can sit and wait. That's the easiest option. If you want to move that process along a little bit, you can saturate the feed by untwisting the converter a little bit and forcing ink down through the feed like I'm doing. And you can see as it's saturating the feed now. Now it's going to write a little wet when you do that. So what I usually like to do is, especially if you have a clear one like this and you can see when it's kind of saturated, I saturate it and then I'll bring it back up and kind of soak up some of the extra. So you've kind of just filled it and then it's kind of back to normal for the most part. But the ink level is still a little bit lower because now your feed has been properly filled. And then it's only usually like the very tip that you have to do, but you can always like dip it in the ink and kind of get it primed a little bit there. That's going to get you most of the way where you need to go. If you don't want to force ink down through the converter, you can just, try dipping the nib in the ink itself and then writing with it a little bit, and then that will kind of help to get the ink in and around there and get going. That's not as good of a method as trying to force the ink down through, but it's better than nothing. And that's honestly probably the two tests that I had. Did I have anything else there? No, that was pretty much it. So dip testing it and getting it going, just kind of giving it time. You can always shake it a little bit like this. Then you're risking, having ink come out when it does get fully saturated, or forcing a little bit of ink down through the feed would be the way to get that done. Cool? Well, that's it for this week. A little bit shorter Q&A this week, which is okay because my team's busy and I'm going to go back and give them lots of handshakes and high fives for your awesome day of work today. So I'm glad to be able to get that done before the end of the day. Usually when I shoot Q&A, I run pretty much right up to the end of the day. So for this week, I actually have an interesting question that is not related at all to anything I talked about in the video. So last week I talked about, the question of the week was, okay, how essential am I to the brand and recording of videos and so on and so forth. So sort of building upon that, but not necessarily. I've been having a lot of conversation with my media team about live streaming video. So Periscope is something we've been using for the last year or so. We got close to 3,000 followers on Periscope, but an interesting development with Periscope is excuse me, goodness, I'm gassy today. Catch.me is a site that has been around for about a year, since Periscope has started to pick up steam. It's been capturing all the live stream from Periscope and saving it. Well, they are decommissioning, so they are no longer going to be in existence as of about a week, right? Or somewhere very close to that. So they are shutting down. They did not get the funding they needed to continue, and they are going away. That has brought up some conversation as to the future and legitimacy of Periscope. Periscope is owned by Twitter, so they've got some muster there, but even Twitter is having to figure things out right now. Now you also have Facebook Live, which is up and coming. I'm hearing that Facebook is putting a lot of resources into their video side of their business, especially with the live portion of things. YouTube also has a live feature, and for us, our YouTube audience is obviously very engaged, as you are right now, and also YouTube, we have a much larger audience there than we have on Facebook. So what's interesting to me is thinking we're kind of at this point right now where the concept of live streaming video is something that a lot of social media platforms are experimenting with. Some of them are falling by the wayside, and some of them seem to be working to figure it out. So my question to you, that was a big setup to this question. My question to you as a YouTube viewer, a possible, Facebook Liver or Periscoper, what is your take on the different live streaming video platforms? I would especially love to hear if you have any experience with them, especially Facebook Live and YouTube, because we have less experience using those. We've been doing the Periscope thing for a while, but even that has kind of been plateauing for us lately. Makes me question, is Periscope the future of it? Because, what's interesting is when I went to the DC show last year, a lot of people were Periscoping. When I went to Atlanta Pen Show this year, I didn't see a single person Periscope the entire time we were there, including myself. Now, part of that might have just been it was a smaller show and it was a more intimate feel and everybody wanted to engage face to face. Part of it too was just that, Periscope has gotten a little noisy. Like, I know a lot of people who have followed us on Periscope but have turned off their notification because they're just getting whistles all the time and it's kind of interrupting their life. And I've noticed that, like, even though our viewership, or our subscribership has gone up on Periscope, that the actual number of people that are watching any given live stream is stayed pretty flat for the last 6 months or so. So to me, it's kind of like, okay, what is going to be the future here of this for us? So I genuinely just want to know the best way to serve you. So where this ties into the question from last week is, as my time is getting more and more limited as someone who can't be everything, all places, everywhere, where can I best serve you? Where do you guys want to see me the most? Because I'm very happy to do it. I'm spending time on Snapchat these days. I'm, in the comments on YouTube, especially Q&A, more and more recently. Colin and I together are kind of tag teaming YouTube comments. You've probably seen Colin's name a lot more. He's my buddy there, and we're going to be, working together on YouTube comments together because you guys are just really engaged, and I love it. So I'm trying to figure out kind of what's the next move. So for you guys, I would just love to know, where do you want to see me best? What do you like about Periscope? What do you like about Facebook Live? What do you like about YouTube live streaming? And I just want to know the best way to help you out. So that is a very extended question of the week for this week, but please, I would love to hear. So that's it for this week. Hopefully you've had a good week. If you wanted a dark lilac, I hope you were able to get one. If you don't want one, then you're probably like, stop talking about it, and I will, because I'm done for this week. So hope you have a great weekend, a fantastic rest of your week. If you're not following me on any of these social media channels I mentioned, you should, because I'm doing a lot of cool stuff. So hope you have a good time. Subscribe to YouTube if you haven't already, and visit gouletpens.com if you're interested in buying anything, because that helps support me and these videos. So shameless plug on there. I hope you have a good time. I've said, like, I keep wanting to say hope you have a great week and a great rest of your week. But that's it for now. So thank you so much. Right on.